Friends and folks, welcome to the Kaiju Lounge, your home for humor, opinions, and nerd shit. I'm your boss, Monster Noah Waterman, and my guest tonight is an artist, designer, and one half the team behind Kaiju Brooklyn, the brains of the event, if you will, which I was lucky enough to attend earlier this summer. Take a look.
Some swag. Ultraman Rising coming to the Netflix. What a weird resurgence for kind of a niche character. I'm actually pretty psyched about it. It should be a lot of fun. Oops. Sorry. Here's the truth. I don't need a Kamen Rider figure. I don't need 8 Kamen Rider statues in my home. Need is not the question. Do I want them? Yes.
Please welcome the man behind Robo7, John Bellotti Jr. John, thank you. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing, Noah?
I'm doing great. It is blisteringly hot, and I'm still wearing a blazer, so that's a good sign. You're in New York as well, so I feel like you're feeling it as much as I am.
Oh yeah, I was at work today, and just like the sweat was just like flying off my nose onto everything I was working on. It was just horrendous out. Horrendous out.
Well, so if it smells like sweat, then that's how you know it's authentic, right? And then there's no imitations.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's kick things off, man. And I feel like this question's more pertinent to you than literally anyone else I could ask this. How was your con?
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Definitely learned a lot more this year, I think. This year felt more like a con proper than like last year. You weren't at last year's show, right?
I was not able to make last year's. Now, I actually only discovered for this event, which is why I didn't realize it was even as new as it was until I think we had first started talking.
Oh, wow. So last year was basically just that vendor room that you were in and a screening at night, and that was it. And it was like so easy. It was fun. This year we expanded to include different parts of Industry City where our venue is. And we added panels, we added multiple screenings, a VIP night, which is where we met. We had a great conversation.
Yes. Yep.
It was definitely, like I said, definitely felt more like the first show was a proof of concept, like, hey, let's do this and see if it works. The second show felt like, okay, now we're at an official like year one or infant stage, I would say, of a real convention. Like that's what it felt like. And even my partner Anthony of BK1 Productions, he said the same thing. He said last year felt like, okay, yeah, well, this was cool. It's a nice, like a cool idea. And he's like, this year, he's like, it feels like a real thing. I said, yeah. And I made a few personal mistakes in leading up to the show that I will not be doing again next year. I won't spare you the details, but it was a really, really good learning experience. And the turnout was better than last year. Vendor sales were up. Yeah, vendor sales were up from last year, including my own, my T-shirts and artwork. And attendance was up, and panels were great. Panels were a lot of them. My panel was the first one. It was standing room only. The VIP night was a lot of fun. It was overwhelming. I'm still partially recovering from it, even though it's been over a month.
So I'm actually going to want the details. I want to get into those. But before we do, I want to jump into kind of the beginning of all this, and just kind of ask you, how does one decide to start a con? I mean, it's not an easy task to get into the creative space in the first place in general, but like. Right. Literally, you're pulling a con out of scratch. Is this something that you've had experience at least helping run some other cons before, or were you truly coming into this blind?
No, I was definitely not blind. It's a really long. It's not a straight answer as to how and why I got into it. It's a lot of things coming together at the same time. It's like that scene in Final Wars where it's like Rodan, King Caesar, and Guirus and Godzilla all running towards each other. And I'm like, I'm like Godzilla and like everything else. The other kaiju are just everything coming together. But basically, I've been doing conventions since 2015. selling my artwork, and I was doing a show called G Fest in Chicago. It was basically the only kaiju show in the country. After 2020, a lot of things changed in the convention scene.
Hmm.
G Fest changed their rules, unfortunately, to not allow artists to sell at shows. I won't get into those details, but I always had a
Huh.
great time there. Met a lot of great friends there. Um, but I've always done other conventions and I actually done better at shows like New York Comic Con and Anime NYC, which are in my backyard. Which leads me to the second thing that happened was basically I did an event at Japan Society. Thank you to Peter Tatara. Peter used to run Anime NYC, but now runs Japan Society in Manhattan. They did a special screening of Mothra 61 about 2 years ago, and
Okay.
myself and Chris Olio of Seismic Toys were allowed to set up a booth and sell my art prints, and he sold his toys. And the turnout, like it was a sold out event. All the theater seats were sold out, and we did incredibly well financially. Like, just like unbelievable. And we looked at each other and said, we should really pursue more things like this because why do we have to travel to like Chicago or LA where there's other, tokusatsu events where we could just do it in New York? Like we don't have anything in New York right now, not since G-Con left to become G-Fest in the 90s, right?
Hmm.
So that was like the second thing. The third thing that happened was um, basically I work in Hollywood, so I work on movie sets, TV shows, and the writer and actor strikes happened last summer, as everyone knows. Um, my friend Rob, who works at Industry City Brooklyn, which is where we have our show, he works
Right.
upstairs, and for a while I told him the idea I had for Kaiju Brooklyn, and I tried to do it with Japan Village, and Japan Village never got back to me. So May of last year, Anthony Marino of BK1 gets his space in Industry City. He's looking to do events. He's hungry. He's looking for things. Around July is when my friend Rob says, "Hey, you should reach out to my friend Anthony because he's looking to do events and stuff, and maybe you could pitch him your Kaiju Brooklyn idea." Or at the time, I wasn't even called Kaiju Brooklyn. It was just a Kaiju show. And I met up with Anthony in July, and I pitched him the idea, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I said, "Well, when do you want to do this? Do you want to do this?" Well, I should also preface this with I was out of work since May because of the writer's strike. Okay. So I
Oh,
had
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Okay. I had a lot of time. And he said to me, let's do this in October. And I said, well, sure. You know what? Let me think about it. And then the actor strike happened right around the same time I met Anthony. And I said, you know what? I'm doing this. I'm going to be out of work the rest of the year. And sure enough, I was, which fortunately gave me the time to prepare this show in about a month and a half. First Kaiju Brooklyn. Now, working in film and TV has trained me incredibly to basically create something out of nothing. Right? Like I literally go into a
And
soundstage, and create something, with a team of
right.
people.
And in an
Um,
impossibly short amount of time.
Yeah, which again really trained me well for Kaiju Brooklyn. The second show was a little trickier because I was back at work. The job was a little hectic. One of the lessons I learned was give myself more time to prep the week of the event because I did not take enough days off for that where I should have. And that's definitely a big lesson that I learned. I need to treat this event as not just a day and a half show or 2 day show, whatever what we do going forward. The show needs to be treated now as like, okay, this is like Super Bowl week for me. Like I need the time before and after the show to prep and recover properly. So that was definitely the biggest lesson going forward. But I don't even want to tell you all this because I'm just rambling now. But basically, that is
No, it's
the
great.
creation of Kaiju. That is basically the creation of Kaiju Brooklyn.
That's wild. It's just kind of like fortuitous that it works out that way. And so
Yeah,
with BK1 production, kind of comes in, helps give you the space there. The two of you
and
kind
the
of work together, put
logistics, the
together,
logistics.
and yes, yeah, and
Yeah,
obviously there's both of you have both sides have production experience in one way or another, right?
yeah,
You guys have built
yeah.
things, which I guess definitely help for something like this. What were like what was sort of the biggest there's a twofold question. What was the biggest surprise after this first show? The thing that kind of shocked you the most about putting something like this together? And what was the thing that was the surprisingly easier than expected aspect of it?
The surprising thing was how well everybody did the first show. I was so nervous. I convinced all my friends that were toy vendors and artists, right? I convinced my connections at, I make the licensed Ultraman shirts, and I convinced my connections there to give me Shin Ultraman to screen free, basically. And the morning of the show, I'm not kidding, Noah. I was sitting in the venue and I'm just pacing and I'm making sure everything's okay. And like, now the thing is, I had unbridled confidence going into this. I did. I didn't flinch. I didn't second guess myself. I knew 100% with just pure vindication that this thing was. I had to do this, and it was going to be friggin' awesome, right? But the morning of, it was raining. Okay, and the week before, there were like catastrophic floods all over Industry City, and I'm like, oh my god, if it rains, we're screwed, right? We're doing an outdoor screening. What are we going to do? So the morning of, I go and I look outside. Now, if you remember, there's the courtyard, right, to the left of us, and to the right of the venue is like the street. So I go to the street and I'm looking around. And I don't see a line. I'm like, where the hell is everybody? This is going to suck. What I didn't know was the line was in the courtyard. So I have footage of the doors opening and just the throngs of people come in. And I was like, this is insane. It was insane. And then I went over to my friend at so we opened at 10 a.m. At about 11:30, I went over to my friends from Techie Toys. My friend Brennan, I said, how you guys doing? He goes, dude, we're almost sold out. I went, what? It's been an hour and a half. He goes, yeah, dude, we're kicking ass. And slowly everybody started telling me how amazing they did financially, which was, as someone that's been a vendor at conventions for a long time, you remember the shows you do terrible at that you don't do, and you stick with the shows you do good at. And, you always remember that experience. And, money talks when you're a vendor and an artist. Like, money talks bit louder than anything. You can go and have a great time at the show. If you're not making money, you're wasting your time. So that was, like, the biggest surprise for me was, like, not only did people show up, but they were spending. So that was cool. That was really cool. And what was your second question?
I guess what was I mean, it was what was surprisingly easier than expected, which I think you kind of the making money sounds like it, right? A little bit is that this the fact that people just came in and spent as fast as they did is sort of wild.
Yeah.
I think the other one what were the big like lessons, what ended up being kind of harder than expected?
The hardest thing was acquiring the film because there's so much back and forth with Tsuburaya and just companies in general that with the month and a half to prep, getting the permission to showcase the film, like the clock was ticking, and we had to basically announce ticket sales August 1st for a show that's happening in October 6th, I believe it was. So you have to announce tickets like, we're going to do a convention and a screening. Okay, I'm going to buy tickets, but what's the screening? Well, we can't announce it yet. So that put a lot of pressure on us, was getting the permission basically and that goes for any, like I said, any sort of movie. But that was definitely the hardest part. The surprisingly easy stuff, I would just say how easy it came together and how quickly I was just running on instinct and adrenaline, and everything for setup and day of, like, it just was easy. It just felt really easy.
Just kind of came together.
Yeah. It just came together, man.
That's great.
I'm in the business of things coming together, so it didn't feel like, you know what I mean. But if like I was working in like a dentist office and I did this, I'd probably be like overwhelmed. But because this is what I do daily, of like constant like logistical stuff, planning, managing, delegating. The tricky part though, if there was any difficulty, and I definitely counted more of it this past show, was being at my booth and helping to run a show was definitely tricky. And that's something we're working to rectify for Kaiju Brooklyn 3. So that was something we got caught off guard with this year. Again, recognizing recognizing things that were, didn't work and trying to improve on them, that's the only way you're going to get better.
So what do the let's get into this. What do the day of tasks as someone running the con look like? Like working the booth seems pretty, and you correct me if I'm wrong, seems pretty straightforward, right? You're simply
Yeah.
managing, talking to people, making contacts, and selling what you can. But when you're also running the con as well, like what are those day of tasks, or is it really just like you're there for whoever needs you. You're putting out fires. You're making sure everything's getting set up. Like
Pretty
where do
much. Yeah,
those
it's pretty
duties and
much.
how'd you kind of split that?
Last year we had a really great team, and this year, unfortunately, some of our key players were not able to return. So um, one of our one of our key players this year, who rolled over from last year, she's amazing, Tiffany. She's going to be a much bigger part of the show going forward, along with our new recruit Lily, who is just as awesome. Um, Last year was basically just showing up at 7 a.m. the day of the show, unlocking the door and letting people set up, and then just sit back and just, and then Anthony just went and got ready for the screening. But this year was setting up, like opening the door, letting people in, prepping Japan Village for the panels, prepping we used a lot of the bars and breweries for panels. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot of running back and forth. It was putting out fires. There was a lot of communication breakdown issues. Um, me sort of getting involved a little bit more. So I was taken away from my table a little bit more. And that was definitely again, it was the staff that we had was great, all volunteers. Henry is a standout, breakout star. Henry actually is the one that created the name Doug for the Legendary movies. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, it's
really?
crazy, Henry. Yeah, he's the one that created the whole name, the whole Doug thing. Um, but we had some great volunteers, and everyone helped out. And like I said, we were just spread out in all different places, so that was tricky with the logistics. Because Anthony is doing his side, the BK1 side of the show. I'm over here doing like the Robo7 stuff. Um, but now I don't want to go into detail for what we have planned next year, but I will say that we have more help coming on. We have
That's great.
basically yeah, and that's the great thing. That's the great thing, Noah, is that how many people were so excited for the last 2 years that now they're like, I want to be part of this, and it's like great. So I've been like, we've been building our team out. We're slowly building a team that we'll have every year, and we're making a serious run at this, and we're really we're excited, and we'll have like official people doing like this person will run this part of the show, this person will run that part. And it takes a lot of pressure off of Anthony and myself, which is what needs to happen when the show grows.
You can't do it all yourself, and if you want to
No.
find success and make something get bigger and bigger, at a certain point it's supposed to be bigger than you can handle, right? It's like a
Oh yeah.
kid, right? Eventually you can't carry the kid around anymore. You want him
Oh
to
yeah.
grow up to
No,
that age.
yeah. There was a moment on during Kaiju Brooklyn 2. I go back to my booth. I'm sitting there, and the show like at 2 o'clock, it's getting bigger and bigger, and I'm starting to have these visions of like Woodstock '94 or not '94, '99 when they, right? Because I just watched this
Yeah,
documentary,
oh yeah,
and I'm
oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, it felt like it was getting out of control. I'm like, oh my god, like, are we okay? But everything was fine. It was just me being a little too
Right.
over concerned.
I mean, in your defense, you weren't selling water bottles for $20 a pop, so that helps. Uh,
Right. Yeah, that does help.
so the first show you have about like a month and a half or so to throw together, a super fast
Yeah.
turnaround. How long did you give yourself for show two, or were you starting the moment one was over?
No, we gave ourselves a little break because remember it was October, so we rolled into the holidays. So we
That's true.
started prepping. Yeah, we started talking about it in November. So gave ourselves a month, and then we started seriously prepping January and finished up around February. And then so it was
Okay.
about 6 or 7 months. This time we're giving ourselves a year because I need it. And we're slowly starting to talk about the next show already. So we have it's a little under a year away, but it's plenty of time. But it's always plenty of time, but never enough time. You know what I mean? It always comes faster than you anticipate.
A buddy of mine once described uh, when me and my wife first got engaged. He told me that it doesn't matter when your wedding is. because you're planning that entire time. It doesn't matter if you plan it for
Yeah.
9 months or plan it for 15 months away. If you do 15 months, you're planning for all 15 months. You don't have 9 months and you're
Right.
taking some time off, right? And that's kind of this here. When you're always planning for
Right.
the next project, doesn't matter how far away it is, you're kind of got to start now and you'll always have something to do. And it sounds like you definitely
Yeah.
have your hands full with what is a huge and growing show. I'll say everyone I talked to at the event was having a blast. I had a great time.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people were
Cool.
talking about how they look forward to the next one. And we're excited to see what you guys cook up for that. I want to get back to Kaiju Brooklyn 2, because you talked a little bit about
Sure.
there were lessons learned. I want to know a bit of like, what were these lessons learned from the second time around beyond like maybe you can't be in 18 places at once?
That was definitely the biggest lesson. Like I said earlier, giving myself at least 3 days ahead of the show to get settled in and do like prep for stuff. I mean, I should not have been doing stuff the night before or the morning of. We should have tested out the screen. I mean, there were just so many things that we really, really needed that prep time. That was definitely the biggest lesson that I learned. And and Anthony as well. Like we both learned it. And the thing with Anthony too is since we started the show in that 6 months, like we've both grown exponentially with Robo7 and with BK1. He's doing like Kaiju Brooklyn is like but one of hundreds of shows he does a year. Where for me it's just one show. But I couldn't do it without him. He's an amazing partner to work with, and the month of May was insane. Like I was prepping for Kaiju Brooklyn and dealing with last minute things. I have 2 Ultraman shirts I'm trying to release, one to coincide with the release of Ultraman Rising and one just to have for the show. And then I got hired to do a freelance gig, which I can't talk about yet, but I am very excited to talk about it soon. And it was just everything was happening in the month of May. And that's something that I couldn't, it was tricky navigating all that. I mean, it happened. We made it work. And there were other smaller lessons, which I won't go into too much detail. I think there was definitely things we want to do to make it feel a little bit more closed off to the public. Because, we did this great VIP party and people were paying a price to come into a VIP party, but it's a bar that's open to the public. And that's something we were negotiating with the venue, but she was like, look, I can't close the bar. I still need patrons to come in. So, the VIP ticket was more than just the bar. It was also the screening. It was the swag bag to the first 50 people. It was getting in early. So it was just but one element. But I think, for next year, we're really going to tighten up a lot of, our space and make it really exclusive to our ticket holders, because I don't want people to ever feel that, they're paying for this experience, but then like any Joe Schmo can come off the street and participate. Like the vendors room was we were like on lockdown. Like no one was getting in the vendors room unless they paid to get in. Like I chased one guy. I was like, hey man, you can't be in here. Like this is a ticketed event, because with each ticket purchase that you are enabling us to put on the show. And that's what I like to remind people is, because some people are like, everybody wants things for free, or if they don't want things for free when they're paying for, they expect like New York Comic Con level stuff. And it's like, we're not there yet, but we do have to pay for it. We do have to do this. We have to do that. Like,
we can get there, but with your help. It's
Exactly. That's what I just reiterate to people. But yeah, there were just definitely a lot of lessons learned. Again, I won't go into all the gory details, but it was just basically a lot of logistical stuff. And, we definitely wanted to spread it over to 2 days next year with the kickoff party.
That's awesome.
On Friday night. Yeah, it's definitely 2 days because honestly, I can't set up my ridiculous setup for a one-day show. Like I love my setup. It was awesome. But to do all that for a one-day event, it's kind of tiring, And a lot of my
you're putting up and taking down this in one day. It's 24-hour turnaround time. It's a lot.
Especially for the vendors, it's a lot for them too. So like the toy guys, like Vampire Robots, he's got a huge setup. Steve Agin had a Seismic. Those guys had really big setups. So, and it's funny because some of the vendors like the 1 day show. Some of them want a 2 day show. I personally want a 2 day show, possibly 3 days. possibly 4-day. Who knows? But
Make it a week.
Def,
Yeah. They'll
yeah,
take you.
Kaiju Week. Yeah, we'll just take over Brooklyn. I mean, that's the idea. So yeah, that's just the sort of nitty gritty of it. Now you're learning how to make a sausage. So
No, this is interesting because I could imagine many people would love to do what you've pulled off here, right? I'm someone who I've been to plenty of cons, and it's one of those things. It's one thing to be in there, but those are big productions, and people don't realize what goes into that, let alone
right.
how they get as big as they get. And you got to keep in mind, like I feel like especially in New York, we have New York Comic Con and. Yeah, like we got, and it took us forever to get that. I feel like it was always
Right.
San Diego and the other ones.
Right.
So it's like why do you think that is? You're a native New Yorker, born and raised, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So why do you think it is that for such a big city, and for a city who has steep roots in comic books specifically, but like so much nerd culture is made here? Why has it been so hard for New York City to get cons when we see them pop up all over the country?
Well, first of all, I think Anime NYC and New York Comic Con are the two big shows here, and they both monopolize the Javits Center, right? So that's
Yeah.
I think it's a space issue. If I look at the film industry, right, they only started building studios here in like 2005, 2003 or 4. Before that, we had like 2 or 3 like official sound stages here. Everything else they shot in the warehouses because there were no studios here. And then it got to a point where, and this is not really, I'm going on a tangent, but it kind of makes sense. There was a point where there was so many TV shows here, movies couldn't shoot here because there was no space available. And I think in typical New York fashion, I think it's a space issue. I think it's also, like, all right, we do a show. Where do we do it in the city? Well, you do it at the Javits. Okay, well, that's New York Comic Con. What's the other venue? There's that one on 18th Street and like 7th Avenue, which they used to do a comic show there. I used to go there back in the early 2000s. Now they do like a chocolate show and other events. Then there's Big Apple Comic Con. That guy's been going for a long time. He was doing it at the hotel across the street from Penn Station. Then there's WinterCon, which is inside a casino. But my point being here is that none of these shows are in convention centers besides there was the Brooklyn Expo Center in Greenpoint that shut down after COVID, but they did the BK Comic Con and 5 Points Fest. And now 5 Points Fest is at this like mixed use warehouse space by the Gowanus, and BK Comic Con is now at it's the Big Bedford Armory that has been converted to a community center. It's huge. It's a massive place.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's a space issue. It's also a parking issue. Like, where do you park your car? That's what we love about Industry City. There's a parking lot, and if you get there early, there's tons of street parking to be found. But there's a lot that's only $5. I mean, you can't beat that in New York. But yeah, that's my hot take, and it's expensive. It's expensive to shoot films here. It's expensive to put on any sort of event here. And luckily, BK1 Productions, they had the space, they have all the insurance, they have everything I needed, and I just had to roll in there with a group, like a giant crowd of nerds, and off to the races, basically. So, but that's my hypothesis, that's what I think it is.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's the rent has always been too fucking high in New York City, so why would that not affect the rest of us?
Yeah, exactly.
So 2 years in Kaiju Brooklyn, has it been a struggle getting guests and vendors and panelists to hop on something new, or have you found that everyone's been very eager to be a part of this?
No, it's total opposite. I had a wait list of vendors and artists like that was like 20 or 30 people for this year.
Wow.
I had people reaching out to me up to the week of the show, like begging me, like not begging, but asking me, "Hey, did anything open? Anything open?" Yes, I had. I won't say who she is, but she's been in a Toho film. She wanted to come up, and I said, and I had another guy. He did a voice in Ultraman Rising, and I was negotiating with him. And I have no place to put this guy. like I can't. I have no room for anybody. So that's why, I say with panels, like people were throwing like panel ideas, like the outpouring of support from the community and people wanting to be
Wow.
involved has been insane. Like the show is literally building itself, like some sort of AI singularity or something. It's just, just building
Just
itself.
nanobots all climb. Yeah.
Yeah, all like wearing black graphic tees with Godzilla on it. Just like
Right.
coming together like Voltron.
Is
Yeah,
it
so
an
that's
appetite for something other than G Fest to step up? Is that, do you think that's part of it? Because G Fest is
something
like the
weird has
big one,
happened with
right?
GFest. They've been going for 30 years, and I won't say anything bad about them. I won't say anything bad about them, but I do
Very
notice
political of
that
you. Yeah, sure.
um, I'm putting my best foot forward because they've always treated me very well. But it's unfortunate that they decided not to include artists. But what I noticed since they dropped that hammer down, there's been a whole bunch of Godzilla shows popping up around the country now. It's not just us; it's also DamCon. Those guys are great in Texas. Kaiju Go. Now they just announced the Godzilla Fest in the Bay Area. There was a Tucson Kaiju show. So that's like 5 Kaiju shows that have popped up since literally last year. And I don't know if that is a
Wow.
reaction to G Fest or just a reaction that people want this stuff and they don't, maybe they can't get out to Chicago. Japan World Heroes is another one. I did that show last summer. Met a lot of the great people from Superaya, put a face to a name, sold a lot of T-shirts. But this day two was a historical hurricane hitting Los Angeles for the first time in 90 years. So we had to vacate. I'm like, really? Like my first time doing
Oh
this
my
show? And he's like,
god.
but that's Scott Zillmer's show. And he's a great dude. He puts on an awesome show. But his is every other year because he also does his Power Ranger convention every year. Um, but yeah, it's been crazy, man. Like I don't, I don't know. Like when I announced my show, I just did it. The first one we just did it, and then we started noticing other shows popping up. And honestly, it's about time. And I think with people seeing what we do, with people seeing what DamCon and Kaiju Go are doing, other people like, oh well, we could do this too. We can do because people are already asking us like, can you do Kaiju Fort Lauderdale? Can you do like Kaiju Portland, Oregon, Kaiju Wahoo, Nebraska? I'm like, guys, and like somebody was like, can you do Kaiju Dallas? I'm like, guys, you got 2 shows already. Like, I'm not stepping into their
Don't be
turf.
selfish. Don't be selfish.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Well, the
yeah.
appetite's obviously there. That's fantastic. Let's switch gears a little bit. Talk to me about your work as Robo7.
Sure.
How'd you get into that? Like, how'd you get started with that? You're now managing. You now have the Ultraman license. You're making official Ultraman gear, which is great. What are the origins of this, and how'd you get to the point where now you've got a partnership with, let's say, one of the big three tokusatsu?
Well, for as long as I can remember, I was always gunning for the Godzilla license, right?
Mm-hmm.
I, for some, what was happening was all these companies were getting the license to do Godzilla stuff, and I was like, oh man, hire me, ooh, me, like hire me. And I spoke to some of these guys at these companies. They're all great dudes, and my name got out there, and I never got hired. And I'm not saying this like, oh no one likes me. It's like, no, look, I got a fan base. I do my thing. If it comes, it comes. At this point, I'll still pursue it. But uh, so I was getting frustrated, right? I was getting frustrated. So at 5 points 2 years ago, I was talking to the legendary James Groman, and we were talking about the Godzilla license, and he threw out the dollar amount of how much it cost to get the license. And I went, oh, like I can actually swing that. So while we were talking, I was like, man, I'd love to make like Godzilla shirts. Like that's kind of like like what's better than having your artwork on a living billboard out in the world, you know? And
Yeah.
I talked to my friend Dangerbot, who was also there. And that's the great thing about 5 Points Fest. It's a like urban vinyl, designer vinyl, kaiju convention, and it's great for artists and networking. It's my favorite show to attend, besides my own. Um, I went after I talked to Groman, I talked to Dangerbot, my buddy Rob, and he works in the t-shirt industry, and I said, man, I'd love to make these Godzilla shirts, you know? And he's like, yeah. And Rob's like, yeah, I know places you can go get them made, and this is what the process is. I'm like, oh, cool. And he told me, he's like, it would only cost you X amount to get them made. I'm like, oh, really? So then I go back to this. I go back to my booth. I'm sharing a booth with Seismic Toys. Now, Seismic Toys has the license for Ultraman. So as I'm sitting there, I said, hey, man, I found out how much the Godzilla license is. And I say it, and I go, how much is your Ultraman license? And Chris tells me, and I went, that's it? I'm like, wow, that's really, really reasonable. And I said, hey, man, do you mind if I like reach out to your contact? And he goes, yeah, sure. You know, and he gave me the guy's name. And I reached out to him and I said, you know, I'd love to do, because I love Ultraman as much as I love Godzilla. You know,
Right.
you know, Godzilla is my first love, of course, but I mean, there's more Ultraman content to sustain the fandom than Godzilla content, for sure. And Super Tentai and Kamen Rider as well. So I
Right.
reached out to his contact in that, I think that August, and I pitched him the idea of doing shirts. And they said, yeah, we want to do it because no one else is doing it here in the country. No, I'm like one of the, like, there's another guy that does jackets, but I am the only guy doing shirts the way I'm doing them right now. There's another, like,
That's
Results is
wild.
doing one. Yeah, and no one is doing my style. In fact, at Comic Con last year, a guy came over and he goes, he's like, this is your shirts? I'm like, yeah, it's all my artwork. He goes, I was just in Japan last week looking for this stuff, and nobody does shirts like you over there. Really? He's like, yeah, I can't find any shirts like this. A lot of the shirts are just like, you know, screenshots of something. It's just like a whatever their you know, whatever research Super Riot gives some of these licensees, they just print like a photo, just like a photo on a shirt sometimes, you know.
Slap it on a shirt,
Um,
call it a day, kind of thing.
exactly. Even one of my favorite Japanese shirt companies, even their stuff is just like they do a lot of cool text. It's black and white, but even the image is just, you know, just like a random image. I'm like, again, one of the only guys doing illustrated Ultraman T-shirts, and my
Right.
licensee, licensor that I speak with, the main guy, he's like, it's unbelievable, man. He's like, at Japan World Heroes, he's like, your shirts are everywhere. I said, yeah, I know, isn't it cool? um, but that's basically how it happened. It again, it's just being in the right time at the right place, and you know, I'm an opportunist, man. If I see an opening, I go for it. And I saw the
That's great.
opening, and I just took the shot, and here I am. You know, that's the Ultraman story for you. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna, you know, I'm still on the hunt for Godzilla. I would, you know, I talked to them a few times, and unfortunately, I think for them, T-shirts are a little bit oversaturated in the market. But you know, never say never.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just gonna keep moving forward with what I'm doing.
That's wild. You're the only one doing it like this. It sounds like in general, let alone the U.S.
Yeah,
Do you think that Ultraman just doesn't have the reach out here yet? And do you see that with something like Ultraman Rising coming through? Do you see that changing?
for sure. Yeah, it took Ultraman about 10 years to gain a foothold in China. Now it's like the biggest thing. Now they have like the Taipei Ultraman Festival, the Hong Kong Ultraman
Yeah.
Festival. You know, so Ultraman. I wanted when I heard that they got free of that. Have you are you familiar with the Chayo lawsuit they had going on since the 70s?
No.
I won't go into the details, but there was a Thai producer who claimed he had a signature from Subaraya himself with a wax seal saying that he can make Ultraman productions in Thailand, and he could release all the Showa era stuff in his territory for in perpetuity. And Subaraya was like, "You don't have that." And no, he's like, "Yes, I do. I have it in a drawer." And he's like, they're like, what? And this went on for about like 30 or 40 years. And
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. And they finally, I think they took it to the federal court in Japan or the Supreme Court in Japan. Finally, they ruled in Subarai's favor in about 2018. So I remember getting that message from my friends saying, hey, you know, the child thing got settled. They're going to make a big push here in the States. And I was just sitting there like frothing, like, God, like I would love to get involved with that. And I remember I reached out to Jeff Gomez of Starlight Runner, who was all over Kaiju Brooklyn and did great with our panels.
Yeah.
Um, I heard
He
I
introed
heard
the
him on.
movie at VIP night too, right?
Yes, yep. And he stepped in when
Yes.
one of our panelists canceled. He stepped in. Um, I remember hearing him on a podcast talking about it, and he said, "Yeah, fans could always reach out to me." So of course I reached out to him, and he's been pretty great and very helpful with getting my stuff out there. And, big shout out to EJ Kuku. I can't say his last name. Kukulidis. He is the guy, editor in chief of Ultimate Connection, good friend of mine, huge supporter of what I do, and always like giving me like little shout outs on Ultimate Connection. And they were really great with us for Kaiju Brooklyn. So very thankful. And that was the thing with Kaiju Brooklyn. It was I had so many connections from all my years of doing shows, and then I had this amazing giant marlin of a connection with Subaraya. And I said, well, what if I just make a conduit for these guys here in the States somehow? And that's why my show tends to be a little ultra heavy, because they are so great with wanting. They're very aggressive. Their new CEO is a younger guy. They want to get their stuff out there. So, Ultraman, is it as big as Power Rangers here? No. Is it as big as Godzilla? No, it's certainly not. Godzilla's the big fish, but it's getting there. When they announced the lawsuit settling in 2018, they said, "Oh, I think they figured they had 10,000 fans here in the States. Now it's like up to like a million or over a million or something for the fans here, and it's growing. It's growing every day. And that's the thing. There's constant Ultraman content coming out, so you just keep feeding the fandom this stuff.
Yeah.
So
They just released, I believe, a YouTube channel that is going to be official English dubs of Ultraman,
Yep.
which is
It's
one more way that everyone can get access to it.
yeah. I mean, Ultraman Blazar, those views were in the millions. I think it was like 7 million views for that first episode alone. I mean, they did a great job promoting it. The show is amazing. It's one of my all-time favorites. Wish it was a little bit longer, but this is the world we live in. But I'm just excited that I got in on the ground floor of Ultraman. The way I look at it is like Godzilla is one of those things where you buy a house on Park Avenue, or like a fancy apartment on Park Avenue, and then you flip it for just as much or even more money. Where Ultraman is like I'm buying something in an up and coming neighborhood, right? It's like Williamsburg, Brooklyn, in like
Right.
the early 2000s. It's you basically, it's basically like it's the long game. We're all playing the long game with Ultraman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's what I tried to do in Astoria, but I took too long.
yeah.
So we're going back to a younger, a John Bellotti Jr., if you will.
Yeah.
Were you a art fan first, or an artist first, or a kaiju fan first?
Both. It was simultaneous.
So have you always
Which
been
is-
doing specifically tokusatsu art like this, or did you
No,
kind of just
no.
like figure out at some point to connect?
Yeah, it was weird. I always wanted to be a comic book artist, but of course, the way I wanted to get into it when guys like McFarlane and Jim Lee were doing it and were making million. Remember, like they were making millions of dollars. They started Image
Right, when
Comics,
every
like,
X-Men had a pouch on them.
yes, all the Rob Liefeld characters had pouches and guns.
Yeah.
So I was like stars in my eyes. Like I want to be one of these guys, and I want to be Todd McFarlane, and I want to be an entrepreneur like him. And funny enough, I'm doing it my own way. My own special McFarlane way.
Yeah.
But then the market crashed, and it's still never recovered. I mean, the guys that do good, but it's not what it was.
It's not the same.
So I always kind of drew comic book stuff. I was really into I love martial art movies as much as I love kaiju. That's a whole other. I could do a whole martial art convention if I want to, or Hong Kong action movies. So I was always
That
drawing.
would be pretty great.
I just combine them both, make it this big Asian festival. So I was always drawing stuff. I was always drawing my own comics with martial, like in ancient China with kung fu guys, swordsmen and stuff. And I was very inspired by anime. I would draw kaiju stuff as a kid, but I remember I drew Godzilla's face on $1 bills, and I'd make copies of them and gave them out to people. I would draw some of this Japanese chibi artwork I would see, but then I stayed away from it. I went to college for illustration, FIT, and I was drawing a lot of people because my passion was always drawing people. And then I was doing a lot of pinup girls for a while. And then my wife said, well, she wasn't my wife at the time, but she was a girlfriend. She's like, you draw a lot of women. I'm like, yeah, I do, don't I? Right around 2014, when that movie, the first legendary Godzilla movie came out, I was always a fan, but it was, like I said, it was dormant for a while. Between Final Wars and 2014, there really wasn't anything. I followed it. I had toys, I had a collection, but it wasn't like a fever pitch like it now. It's like, my God, like the geyser has erupted.
It's kicked back for sure. Yeah.
It's absolutely bonkers right now. I never thought I'd get to this point, but I'm very happy. But 2014 reignited my passion. I met a lot of cool people on Facebook that were into Godzilla. I did my first G Fest in 2015 because I was looking online at this great poster that an online store was selling. I wanted to say who they were. And I asked them how much it was, and they gave me the price. And I went, that's too expensive. It's like $40 for a poster. I was like an old Italian man. I'm like, oh, I can make my own. I can make my own freaking poster for that, So I did. So I did Godzilla versus Hedorah was my first fan art poster.
Oh,
and the good
nice.
people at Monster Attack Team magazine were like, hey, can I publish that in my magazine? I said, sure. Then after that, I did Mothra vs. Godzilla, and I did Destroyer, I did Gamera 2. And then in 2015, or late 2014, someone said, hey, you should go sell your stuff at GFans. I said, yeah, I always knew about the show. I used to read GFan magazine, but I never had a desire to go out there. I did G-Con. I'd go then, but I don't want to go out there. Maybe. So I bit the bullet. I went out to G-Fest. And as I'm setting up on Friday, like, I just got overwhelmed because dealer's room wasn't open. It was just Artist Alley. And I sold out by Sunday. I sold out of all my prints. And I said, oh, I think I got something. Yeah, and that started my run of doing conventions. That led me up to doing my own convention. And that's how it all started.
That's great. That's what kind of nice to have it all sort of tie in together. Do you view Kaiju Brooklyn as sort of the next step of the overall Robo7 brand, or do you view both as kind of moving concurrently? Or
I think about that a lot. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think about that. It's definitely brought me more notoriety, that's for sure. People come up to me like, hey, Robo, what's up? I think, Anthony and myself at BK1 Productions, he has a full-on production company where he does Shakespeare, he does Comedy Night, he does Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I have Robo7, which is my fan art, my t-shirts. And we both were like, we're kind of worried that like both of our respective identities are going to get lost with Kaiju Brooklyn. But what I noticed this year is that like Robo7 and Kaiju Brooklyn are sort of going hand in hand with each other. They're sort of rising together. It has raised my street cred, as the children used to say. But there is a fear of like, well, I got into this because I do artwork. Like, I can't ever forget that aspect of it, And then there's a part of me that's like, well, I could just do the show, but I do because I like selling my artwork there. So it's, that's one thing I'll never lose is just doing artwork. Whether the goal is to do this show full time and make it my job. Like, that would be the dream. That's what I want to happen. That's where I want to. Hopefully it happens in the next 5 years. That'd be nice. But
wow.
Yeah, I would like that. But yeah, I think, I think Robo7 and Kaiju Brooklyn and BK1, I think they all help each other for sure. I think it raises all of our value in a way. Not that we have low value, but let's just say it shines a light on us that maybe would not have been shined on us in a different, You know what I'm saying?
No, it's one more place for people to discover the other two, right? All roads,
right.
Any road in can lead to a different road out.
Right, and like this year, I definitely took advantage of me being the creator of the show by doing the Robo7 House of Ultraman, and I had all my artwork and a tapestry. Like, it was definitely pure vanity, but I said to myself, this might never happen again. So, like, why don't I just do it? So that's kind of where that came from.
It's your show. Who's going to stop you?
Exactly. Do whatever I want.
So, as we come kind of towards the end of the hour, so to speak, what are you want to keep some of the next show surprise? I get that. What are the what are the 5-year gets? Not necessarily where do you hope to see it in 5 years, but like what are the things that like maybe you're not big enough to do next year, but you really want to try to add to Kaiju Brooklyn when you have the space, the money, the cachet.
Right.
What are the big picture dreams?
In my head, what I see for us is getting a Ultraman stage show from Japan at our event. I don't know if you've ever seen these.
Oh
Yeah, they did it at
no!
Comic-Con last year. It was unbelievable. And my goal is that is definitely one of the goals, is to there are different there are other event spaces inside Industry City, and we're eyeballing an amazing space for next year. But there's also an even bigger space than that, which you could put the entire convention into this space. I mean, it was an old factory inside Industry City. It's the next building over,
Wow.
so it's a little far away from like the restaurants and bars and stuff. But
Oh, I think I
you
know what
know,
you're talking about. I've never stepped over there, but I've seen on the
yeah,
map where it is.
yes, yeah, it's a big black building over there. I mean, I'd love to be in
Right.
there one day, but I foresee us getting a stage show. I don't know what we would get from the Godzilla side of things, but definitely like a huge cosplay contest, exclusive screenings, exclusive guests. Like we were hoping to get exclusive footage from Ultraman Rising this year, but because Netflix were keeping it close to the chest, understandably so. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, like we couldn't get anything like that. But I'd love to get like the world premiere of this kaiju movie, or this actor's doing this one signing, like something exclusive, something to get people to like come out to New York and meet people. And with conventions, it's I've done so many in like New York, and you know it's you kind of I don't want to say you hit a ceiling, but I'd love to just get to a point where the show is running itself. We all know what it entails, and we just have like if the big three were all involved in the show, like I would be so thrilled with that. But I know it's a lot of red tape to get all that involved. Like if we had like a Sentai performance, Kamen Rider performance,
Oof.
Ultraman, a Godzilla performance, I mean, it would just be a dream come true. I mean, and the sky's the limit. We don't want to ever limit ourselves to something like this.
I mean, that'd be amazing. And then you slowly work in kung fu films, sneak those in behind when people aren't paying attention, and you've
Yeah,
expanded your reach even more.
yeah, yeah. I would love to. I mean, there was something called the Asian Fantasy Film Festival here in the tri-state area, but that came and went. And it was a little more broad spectrum. I think what I like about our show, as much as I would love to have all the kung fu stuff involved in it, I'm definitely keeping it kaiju. Everyone has been pretty adamant about me keeping it kaiju, and I'm adamant about it. I have,
I think it
I'm the
scans.
artist. I'm the creative. I want it to look a certain way. I want it to look good. I want it to feel good. I'm already designing like table runners for us and pop-up banners for like official table stuff. And, like I want it to just look like an awesome designed con. And I wanted to be kaiju focused. There was concern that maybe actually no, there wasn't any concern. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. But there was a lot of interest from anime vendors wanting to get in on the show. I'm like, guys, hey, that's cool, but like this is kaiju stuff. You guys have like 2,500 shows you can do in the New York area just for anime. Like, just let us have this one,
Yeah.
okay? Just one.
Don't taint the water just yet.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm not in any rush. But even Gundam stuff, I'm not really in a rush to add that to Transformers. I would Evangelion, of course, because that's Tokusatsu. Like Kikaider, Hakaider, the Metal Hero stuff. Like, yeah, of course. But we're not going to go there. I'm keeping it kaiju, man. This is our foundation. You know,
I feel like keeping it kaiju is a great T-shirt slogan too. So it's perfect.
keeping it kaiju. There it is.
On that note, John, man, thank you so much for hopping on and joining me, spend the time with me today. Where can people find you?
You can go to my website, www.robo7.com, and you can pick up some awesome Ultraman shirts, some art prints. And if you go into contacts, you can find all my social media handles. For example, on Instagram, I'm at Robo7, Roboseben. And for the Kaiju Brooklyn people out there or people that are interested in it, you go to kaijubrooklyn.com. It's also Kaiju Brooklyn at Kaiju Brooklyn on Instagram, which is we primarily have the most fun and most engagement on Instagram. So that's like our main social media page, and we're also on Facebook at Kaiju Brooklyn and Twitter, but Instagram is where it's at right now for us.
And if people want to basically get involved in some way, whether it be volunteering or throwing ideas, I don't know if you want to open up to the mass public of just a slew of emails with ideas for you, but if people want to be involved in some way, what's the best way to get in contact?
Go to kaijubrooklyn.com and scroll to the bottom of the page. There's an email at the bottom, kaiju@brooklyn1.org. Always looking for volunteers, man. Like, we need volunteers for setup, for wrapping out, screenings and stuff like that. We could always use a few extra hands. And if, we like you, we'll invite you back next year and talk about some more compensation. But if you're interested in being part of the team, let us know. Let us know what you want to do. We could use the help, especially next year. What we have, what we're planning, we could definitely use some help. So.
Well, you hear it there. They could use the help. It's a great show. If the videos for myself and other people who posted do not convince you, then come down, do yourself a favor, just go. It's a great time. Thank everyone for watching. If you need to follow me anywhere, it is Boss Monster Kaiju everywhere but X, because Elon Musk is an ass. And like and subscribe while you are here, because that helps the channel out. John, thank you again for hopping on, for chatting with me. For everyone else, until we speak again, stay cool, stay hip, stay heavy.